I have a question for you. Do people change? A rather common expression with a weird answer. Since we're always technically changing, physically, mentally, emotionally, it's human nature to change, to grow, to develop. But no, that's not what the question and the expression actually mean. It's supposed to represent the question, can bad people change for the better? And that's a really confusing question with a variety of valid answers, depending on who you are, the environment you were raised in, and who you're close with. Today is a special day. Today we're celebrating my 2-year anniversary. 2 years of Shy Chef. I won't go into a big speech, mainly because I did that with my 100th video special, remaking my first video. But still, thank you. Thank you for supporting and growing this channel over the past 2 years. This channel was always meant to be a place to discuss webtoon series. Always meant to be a gathering place for everyone to talk about what they love. And thanks to that, thanks to you, I've gotten nearly 10k subs, became a webtoon ambassador, met some incredible people, and even got invited to the digital convention Helveticon as a special guest alongside some other webtoon ambassadors. Check the link in the description for more details. So for all the supports, here's the long-awaited video talking about John again. I probably don't need to introduce the series, but in case I do, the world of Unordinary is a different world. A world where nearly everyone has superhero-like abilities. Everyone except our main character, John. Unlike other series that take this approach, Unordinary likes to shake things up. These kids don't go to school to hone their abilities or to become heroes. They're just going to school, like standard high school, with math, English, whatever. Granted, standard is a little different than yours or mine. Their world is a world based on strength and power. Based on how easily you can beat down anyone who looks at you weird. As you can imagine, having no ability is pretty much as powerless as you can get. And his attitude and tendency to smart talk his opponents doesn't help his case. John gets beaten down a lot. Even when he manages to escape the fight, or even win, he rarely suffers no damage. But that's just it. John does have an ability, probably the strongest one out there, aura manipulation. Having the ability to mirror and amplify other people's abilities, even using 4 abilities at once. But that raises an interesting question: why didn't he use it? If he had such a powerful ability, why did he take 2 years of beatdowns and broken bones? Why didn't he fight back? The answer lies at the beginning. Now, saying John doesn't have an ability is a lie. Saying he didn't isn't as much of a lie. John was powerless. He was, as the series calls it, a crippled. And what an interesting way to describe it. We don't really bat an eye at that label now, but a crippled. A person with a severe limitation of a specific kind. Interesting. Anyways, we see that before Wellston, before our story begins, John was seemingly born with no ability. And because of this, John was beaten down often, and was led to group up with other low tiers, Adrian and Claire. These guys would become friends, and while Adrian and Claire would be content with living at the bottom, John wasn't. John was angry at the world that he was dealt an unfair hand. That the people with the power all suck. That they misused their power, that they were born lucky. However, it turns out that John was dealt a good hand. Like I said, aura manipulation. Granted, it does take a couple months for him to use consistently, and probably years for him to master, but John gains powers. But that's also kind of the problem. John slowly starts to become the very thing he clearly despises. Those people on top who misuse their powers. Granted, I'm not entirely sure if John is to blame for 3 reasons. The first is that people tend to suck. One thing I noticed in the comments of most of my John videos is a lot of people defended him with the excuse of, well, everyone else is kind of a terrible person. And you know what? Yeah, a lot of people do indeed suck, and many people before and after still think they're hot crap. And people are idiots. Like this fool who says that John is still a cripple in his eyes after John beat him up. Like, what were you expecting to happen in that scenario? Anyways, the other reason involved John himself. It's not difficult to say that John has anger issues. He gets angry very quickly for a number of reasons. Believing that the world is out to get him, believing that the world is unfair, even when he has powers, whatever. However, another reason is what he was taught. There's a quote that I always love to use when talking about John. It's when Cecile and Eisen are discussing John. They talk about the high-tier mentality. As Cecile puts it, don't be ridiculous. If he's a high-tier, his parents were as well. They would have raised him better. Now, I'm not gonna get into John's mom now, because that's a can of worms for another day. Instead, I want to focus on how they raised him. Now, I love William, his dad, and I don't believe he failed his son. Instead, it's likely he didn't teach him the responsibilities of being a high tier, of being powerful, as there was never a need to. Remember, a cripple, a person with a severe limitation of a specific kind. You wouldn't teach someone in a wheelchair to run. You wouldn't teach someone blind the difference in colors. And you wouldn't teach someone without powers the ramifications of powers. These may be weird examples to bring up, but the series makes these comparisons when they call someone without powers a cripple. These three reasons are what turn John into what he hates the most: a power-hungry and angry child blessed with immense powers. And that power only fuels his rage, as the more he fights, the more he wins, and the more he wins, the more he feels like he's in the right, and the more unfair it feels when other students don't see him in the right. This eventually causes an uprising, and causes one word to be the linchpin in John's identity. That word being...
monster.
Monster. After this, John gets forced into readjustment classes. And of course, no one really knows what these classes are like. William sure didn't. And if he did, I doubt he or any reasonable person would let their child into it. These classes were created to fix problem children. Our original thoughts were that they were classes meant to course correct people who didn't understand how the system of power works, where the strong led and the weak cower. However, it's likely more malicious than that. With Keon in charge, he forces his subjects to relive horrible memories of themselves, reliving their worst actions over and over and over again. Not until they learn to live within society's expectations of them, but until they're too broken to reject them, too broken to fight back. And this is where that term monster comes into play in a major way, as after this moment we can track the use of this word with what happens in the series chronologically. After his readjustment classes, John has been fully broken, believing himself to be beyond repair, beyond salvation, beyond love, believing himself to be a monster. Locking himself in his room and spending the days in bed reliving his awful actions, until his dad reaches out, making the book Unordinary, a book about someone using their powers for good. And even if John doesn't believe he could be a hero, it still resonates with him, getting him out of his room, taking the world one step at a time, becoming a person he wants to be, leading us to the first season of Unordinary. Man, I really talked about like a collective 25 chapters over most of this video. Anyways, the rest of this video is pretty clear to see. John joins Wellston under the pretenses of a cripple, to, as he puts it, fade into the background. And it's probably his best shot of living his life. The reason I explain in this video, but the general gist is that John doesn't trust himself to put himself in any position of power. He's afraid that he'll be corrupted by that power again. He's afraid that he'll become a monster again. And we do see this a lot, especially when he's fighting back, or when he's fighting too hard, we see the word monster flash, and he runs away. However, that attitude changes as more and more students from Wellston start to attack him for no reason, literally no reason most of the time. But especially when Arlo comes into the picture. Arlo, who deserves another video at this point, believes too much in the rules and established traditions of the hierarchy. And when he notices that a cripple of all people is acting high and mighty, he decides to get the truth out of him by force. Which is when Monster comes back into play. The biggest reason John doesn't fight back with his ability is because he doesn't want to be a monster again. However, at this moment, the monster role shifts, as he believes them to be the monsters, fighting back because he wouldn't be in the wrong for standing up for himself. And, he's not wrong. John should be able to fight back. The problem is that John only has 2 modes. It's either 0 or 100 and there's no in between. As his dad explains, you're strong, so show your strength. Judge yourself the amount of force you need to stop a fight from breaking out. You can be proactive about these things, John. That's because the only times you allow yourself to use your ability are when you're too angry to control yourself. And he's not wrong, as John has always used his ability to fight back only when his emotions overtake him, only as the final last resort, as he constantly destroys everyone and anyone that hurts Seraphina as the Joker. And the role of Monster shifts again in Season 2. Now it's no longer them as monsters or John as a monster. It's both. John's a monster, but so is everyone else, which is why this moment is so amazing. During this fight, there are 2 voices in John's head. One is loud, aggressive, the hateful one, the one we see a lot in Season 2, and the other one is John, the one who knows the truth but is scared of what it all means. And here's why it's so important. John's aggression, his anger, his hatred are a ruse. Because without them there, without him blaming others, without him believing that everyone is a monster, he'll fully understand the truth that his actions aren't justified, that he's in the wrong, that he's a bad person. That's why his anger takes precedence, because he doesn't want to believe it. Which is also where this moment comes into play. After being suspended and sent back home, he runs into his old friend Adrian. And when Adrian explains that Claire didn't really betray him, that she made everything up to try to get through to John, John got pissed. And that really got me confused for a minute. But then it started to make sense. John wasn't a good person. That's not really a debate at this point. He admits it himself. However, I think he was still holding out hope for one reason. Claire. Believing that she betrayed him. John wanted one excuse, one reason that he wasn't to blame. I don't think he wanted to play the victim, he just wanted one reason outside of his control that he became the person he was. But now there's no excuse, there's no reasoning, there's no easy way out. John now sees that he isn't a good person. Which is where that question I raised at the beginning comes back into importance. Can bad people change for the better? How often have our snap judgments become our only opinions on a person? How often has one bad moment become how we view a person? How often do we villainize someone for something that happened years ago? It's understandable, yeah, but it can't be valid 100% of the time. The problem with this question isn't that we believe people don't change, it's that John believes people don't change. John believes that he doesn't deserve forgiveness, that he doesn't believe he's worth it, that he doesn't believe he can change. And I think I'm to blame here as well. My videos about John were intentionally divisive, made with the purpose to draw a line in the sand and ask which side you stand. But that's part of the problem, isn't it? We say that John has to be on one side or the other, but refuse to believe that John can change, can switch between the sides, can become better or become worse. I made this video for 2 reasons. The main one being I wanted to talk about John, and with the mid-season finale finally here, it was the perfect time to. But the other one was to erase that line in the sand. To show both sides that John is an amazing character. Realize that John is a fictional character, a drawing, yet he inspires something passionate in all of us. Something that makes us argue with random people on the internet. Something that makes us ask really dumb questions sometimes. Something that makes me make 6 videos dedicated to him, and even more that have him as an integral part of the video. I guess I just wanted to say thank you, Urwichan. You made such an incredible, engaging, well-defined and developed character. And thank you for sharing such an interesting character with all of us. I think part of the problem is we view the world too much in black and whites. Remember Arlo? Remember how we hated him? He's changing. He's abandoning his old traditions that are holding people back. Remember Blake? Remember how he shot a beam at John's head? Now he's part vigilante. He's helping the safe house. He's becoming a mediator. Eisen is did use his position to spread the truth. Remy finally took a stand. Serafina is hanging out with low tiers. The world isn't black and white, and that's what this series was trying to push. Because John viewed the world too much in black and white. Too much that they suck, and then these people don't. The series was meant to teach us that the world is a lot of gray. That villains have reasons, and that heroes aren't always great. So when we divide like this, when we say one side or the other, we're kind of defeating the points of the story. We're kind of defeating the purpose, aren't we? The world isn't a clear-cut, pretty picture. It's not black or white, it's shades of gray. But isn't that what makes it beautiful sometimes? Isn't that what makes it amazing? We can mess up, but we can change for the better. All we have to do is take a chance. But that's all for today. So, like always, thank you for watching, and thank you for 2 years. Take care.